Okay, so now I'm starting with the today's session. Now, whenever you write some code, okay, there is obviously need to test it. So, if you have written like say, any Java programs, right, till date, how do you test it? So you write main method for it. Okay. Now this main method which is there, that is, there you create a new class and you call the appropriate methods. Now if you see from this angle, like say the code is very big, writing main methods might not give you the entire visibility, right? Plus say one class has 15 or 20 methods. Now what are you doing, what will you be doing, like you'll be calling each of these methods individually one by one, or like how it is done. So there can be different configurations in the case of different test cases. So calling all the methods might not be the solution. So you might be willing to call only one method at a time. But the main method from where you call these things can be only one, right? First of all. Second of all, even if you say in some way you are able to write from main, like call different methods. Okay. Now even if you call different methods and even if you call different methods and these methods have so even if you call different methods, now these methods, once you execute at that time, you know what is the uh, what is the answer or what is the solution you're expecting. Okay. But when it comes later, you do not know what should be the answer, right? So say if you have written a big program, not one program but multiple projects are there and many folks have worked on it and a new maintenance unit is there, so there are folks who are maintaining the software. So if that is the case, right, so if that is the case, then I mean, how do we find out what was the output which we expected from the main method going forward, right? Because not everyone who is working on it knows what the output should be. So the JUnit or any other unit testing framework has to provide answers to such questions. Now JUnit is obviously for unit testing. It is used for Java code. You can add separate methods in the test class. Okay. JUnit test classes, and once you write those methods, then you are ready for running it. And there can be testing for different methods. Okay. And only the methods which are annotated or which start in a particular way are picked up for testing, and from there you can do your work. Okay. And you can even add your expectations in the method, saying that this is how it has to be done. Okay. Now once you have done it, then either the green button will come or the red button will come. So from there you can find out whether your test cases have passed or not passed. So similarly, if you use Maven, then at the end of the run, you will see how many test cases have passed, how many cases have failed. Okay. So this way JUnit helps a lot in unit testing. And if you see today's world, JUnit is very important. So it has been made as a practice that everyone who is working on coding has to write test cases, has to write JUnits. So it is one of the necessities, first of all. Okay. Second of all, the thing is, there are various development methodologies. One of it is known as TDD, which is test driven development, where you are asked to write the test cases first and then go forward for the actual coding. So it is like you write your test cases first and then start with the development, which is TDD method of developing code. And if your code is very big, so there are hundreds of modules, hundreds of sub projects, it is difficult, right, to maintain it. So what will happen if there are hundreds of developers who are working and some of them have added their test cases, some of them have not? How do you keep track of all of it? So there are code coverage tools. Okay, so there are code coverage tools which has been there for a while, and by different companies, not one company but by different companies, and they show how much of your test cases are covered with JUnits and how much percentage. And if anything is not covered, that is also shown in red. If anything is covered, it is shown in green on the same UI, like your code. You can include it as one of the Eclipse plugins. So one such tool is Clover. So Clover gives you the code coverage as far as JUnits or unit testing APIs are concerned. So it is one such tool. It is a paid product. You can download it for having a trial, but after 30 days the trial expires. So that is the deal with Clover, and it is quite famous in the sense that there are folks in the industry who are using it. So that's about the introduction to JUnit. Now let's go back. Let's go to a small sample and see how it works, and then from there onwards we'll take it. So let's first close everything. Okay. Now let's start with JUnit. So this is the my JUnit project. Okay. Now if I go here and see, this is one method, simple method, right? Very simple. So it is app is equal. I'm passing two strings. If they are equal, I'm sending it as 0. If they are not equal, I'm sending it as 1. Right? Now if you go in the src test Java, I have written one JUnit class, which is app test. So basically there are several methods which I want to test, and for illustration I have this particular app class and it has this is equal method. Now this app test has this number of test APIs, right? So one such API is, I mean, like since we have only one API here, right now, one method, we have one test method. So any method which, I mean, this class which we call as JUnit class can have hundreds of methods, right? There can be many methods which are private, only for illustration, right? Sorry, not for illustration, but for internal use. Some other public method like this test is equal is calling it. So that can also be the case. So it's not that everything which is there in this particular class is a test method. So it's not the case. So how do we distinguish? So from JUnit 4 onwards, I mean 4 is a version, 4 dot something. So from JUnit 4 onwards, you have this annotation, I think, which is add test. So if you go here and see, this add test is nothing but one class has been imported. Import org.junit.test. Okay. Now what this test is, that when you run this particular class, right, this will reply back with the, whenever you run it, all the test methods which are annotated with add test will be run, like the way in which that has been done here. So here basically you are calling this is equal API, you're passing two strings, and then you have another like check assert equals. Now assert equals is one of the methods in the org.junit.assert class, and using import static you can import it, and without giving the actual class name here like assert.assert equals, you can just write assert equals, and then you pass here what value you're expecting. So here's the names are different, right? So you're expecting 1 because that's what the coding was done here for. So the coding was that if the date is equal, if both the data is equal, you send it as 0. If both the data is not equal, you send it as 1. So that's how it was there. Okay. Now, and you have this assert equals. So once you have this assert equals, you pass these integers and say that yes, I expected 1, and you compare it, and when you compare it should work fine, right? So let's try to run it once. So when you do a right click to run as, and this will give you the option of run as JUnit test. So you go and click on it. Now since it is a straightforward method, it does not take time. Sometimes the application, if it is used, it takes even 5-10 minutes or more. So that can also be the case. If you see here, this is the name of the class, right? com.abhishek.jna.apptest, and it has one test API, but this is the class name. Inside this, if all the APIs are listed, and if at this level you see green color, it means that all the APIs have passed, right? Whichever is inside it, and here inside this particular stuff, you can see individual results. So if any of the test APIs which is there in the app test fails, then the color will change to red. Like say if here, if you did not, you for whatever reason you expected 0, right? We are saying that these two strings are equal. What to do now? So let's run it and see. So this is expected 0 but was 1. Since this is expectation here, it fails. And it fails, it shows us in red color. So the thing is that here, uh, I mean, if you have multiple test cases, even if one of it fails, at the class level this will be red, and the other one, depending on which one passed, will be green, which one failed will be red, right? So let's see it here. So this one I'll put the same string. So this one will balance, but this one is different, right? So this method will fail. Test is not equal, because here basically we are giving the expectation that they're equal, right? And this one will pass because their two are same strings, same value, and that's what the expectation is also, right? So let's run it. Now here if you see, the expectation was 0, right, for test not equals, but it was when the value, when you find for comparison this value, this will return it as 1, because here in this app class, if the two strings are not equal, we are sending the values 1. So the expectation, whatever we expected here, is not the correct one. So if you see the definition, the first input which we are expecting is the expected input, whatever we expect. The second one is the actual input, whatever is the like current data. So if you see, this is expectation. I am expecting an integer with the value 0, but what I've got is an integer with the value eq value, which comes from, which is a return value of is equal API from the app class. Okay. Now if you run it, you get like this. Now click here and see, this is showing as red. Inside this is in green. See, but this one is in blue, which gives the error. So that's how the distinction is. Okay, that's how the distinction is. The second thing which I wanted to say was that annotations is a new thing, in the sense that in last, I think, Junit 3 or Junit 4 onwards it has come. Before that, when it was worked out with any public APIs, which if you remove any public APIs which is annotated with, which starts with test, is the one which will be thought of by the Junit framework as the test class, as a test method, and that will only be run. Okay, so that can be the case. So if that is the case, right, I mean, whenever you run it, whichever has the test, whichever method starts with test will be thought of as a test API. So earlier when we used to write, that was the logic, and that's if you see, I mean, I had the habit of writing it like this, but now things have changed. So whenever after the annotations has come into picture, once you annotate a method, whether you enter it as Ram, Rahim, K, B, whatever you want, like say if I enter it as T and Y, it's going to run in the same way. There is no difference. See? So both T and Y ran. So right now there is no difference. Earlier there was a lot of difference. But if you see from the naming convention, obviously, I mean, like whatever was written here, we have taken. I mean, uh, like whatever is the method name, that gives you a good idea about the. That gives you a good idea about the the method name and what is the use of it. Okay, so that's the use behind it. Now, yes. So now if you see, if you go to pom.xml, and if you see here, like what all things are mentioned, then this pom.xml is a Maven pom.xml, right? So I have only one dependency because I'm not using anything else, and the unit dependency is of 4.11. Okay, so this is basically meant by Junit 4. So if you say Junit 3, it means that it starts with 3.x, I mean 3.0 till 3.10, 3.11 till whatever version Junit publish it for. And say if you want to run it from console, like say from here as a Maven test, you can go and right click and give the value here as test. So if you see, it says something has failed. You see, this is how it will come as whenever you build it using Maven. Test run to failures 1. So because one test was failed because I mean of this one T, right? So that's how you will show it as Maven. Okay. And just to show you how I created this project, and I think you should be aware also. But let me do a right click and I'll run a small one. So if you do a right click, new, say project, and you go and select Maven project, and then you'll select one of the archetype plugins. Like here I'll select archetype quick start, then do a new. I will select whatever group ID I want to give, com.wc. The artifact ID last time I selected was JUnit, so it has come as JUnit. If I want to give JUnit sample, that's how it will come. So you come here, see this JUnit sample is there, right? Simple program, src main Java, src test Java, and then here pom.xml. This pom.xml ideally should be empty, there shouldn't be anything, but for testing the attached JUnits, that is only dependency. And see, this is a Junit 3, 3.8.1, but I am using the latest one, 4.11. And the scope is test, meaning that this dependency will be used only when you are running the test case. Okay. For normal compilation, this dependency will not even be used. But I have removed it from the usage, so you don't find that test thing here, the scope. But that is obviously optional. You can give it if you require it to, not mandatory. Okay. Now the thing is that if I go back to this test, okay, and I will discuss on it further. I will just pause for a minute and I'll ask if you have any questions.